Hello, welcome to the Finance Function, the Innov8 Technology Podcast, where finance technology meets real world business. I'm Mike Armstrong, part of the team here at Innov8. We work with businesses across the UK and Ireland, helping them get more from their business systems. We made it back after our inaugural episode. So today we're going to take a look at behind the scenes of the consultation and discovery process here at Innov8. Basically, what we do to get to know you. And who better to answer that than the person who does exactly that, our very own Jenny Denson. Welcome, Jenny, to the Finance Function.
Hi, Mike. Thanks for having me.
So, Jenny, maybe a really good starting point to get ourselves going is maybe a little bit about yourself, your experience within the industry and what you end up doing day to day.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, I've been working in various different types of software solutions for almost 30 years now, working with financial solutions for around about 15 years, and Sage specifically for 12 years now.
Amazing. And then what does your day-to-day role? Obviously, you're a business development manager by title, but it's a bit more than that.
Yeah, so very much about working with organisations, understanding what it is that they do, what their challenges are, what their aims are, what their goals are, and what they're looking to do really from a system point of view as an organisation. So it's working with those, all different types of organisations in lots of different industry sectors.
Amazing. Well, I'm sure we're going to get into some detail. When I was putting my thoughts together about today, I thought maybe one of the first things to do is maybe not quite role play it out, but if I was calling up Innov8 now on the phone, or there was an email inquiry and you were calling me back, what are some of the first things that you're looking to find out and discover?
Yeah, it's interesting, Mike, because most people, when they first contact us, they come with what they think is a specific issue. What we then try and do is understand what's really going on in the business, because things are generally not down to just one particular issue. So that's the start of quite a long process that we have with an organisation. Understand what's happening in the business, what's changed, why has something changed that's caused them to contact us, and what's driving their need for help from somebody. So that's the starting point, really.
Brilliant. And then in terms of, I guess, some of those commonalities that you hear of frequently, I'm sure somebody listening to this, might go, oh yeah, we've got something that we need to be thinking about. When you start peeling back layers of the onion, what common threads do you see?
Yeah, and they are common in quite a lot of organisations, even when they're very, very different. So one of the key things that we see is that businesses are struggling with data, getting access to the data. Organisations tend to have lots of information in the company, but they struggle to get at that information, to analyse it and report on it. That's one of the key things that we find. Another one is growth. When organisations have been growing, through whether that's organically or through acquisitions, requirements change quite fundamentally in the business, and they may find themselves with a system that, again, no longer meets their requirements. So yeah, data, growth, it might be, they might have had a senior management change, they might have been acquired. All of these things tend to spark some kind of change and some kind of requirement within the organisation to look at something new.
So in that early conversation, I guess there's probably things that you're trying to understand in those early conversations. What's helpful insight for yourself?
Yeah, it's one of the main things that we're looking to understand. What are the objectives that organisations have got? What are they looking to achieve? What things are they finding difficult now? Understanding the people within the organisation as well. That's really, really key. So we understand the type of people, their needs, and their requirements as well.
And I guess it can sometimes possibly start off as I've seen this online, or I've spoken to a peer or a colleague. Is it a conversation then about software, or when does the conversation about software even begin? Because we're not even spoke about software at this point. It very much seems to be around businesses' challenges. So how does that come into the picture?
Yeah, I mean, the conversation is very rarely about the actual software, Mike, and we would hold off talking about actual software for as long as possible through the process, really. It's not usually about software, it's usually about business challenges. Software is just a tool that you might use to help you with that. So the real conversation is around the processes in the organisation, the people in the organisation, and the outcomes that people are looking to achieve. One of the things that I learned years ago is don't try and answer the question before you actually know what the question is. So let's not jump ahead of ourselves by going, oh yeah, that's the system that you need, that'll solve your problems. Because probably at this early stage, we don't actually know what the challenges and the problems and the issues are.
And that might sound a little bit perverse coming from a company that at its core, sells, supports, implements software. I guess there's those kind of questions to ask and understand, then maybe start to have the conversation around, I guess it's features, benefits, but actually what you're saying is until we know what those problems are, why start trying to solve things? Because there could be a really strong recommendation for something, and then all of a sudden something else crops up and then it changes that recommendation. Do you see that happening?
Yeah, I mean, totally. And as I say, we go into these conversations with a very open mind. We don't go in with an end result. Sometimes organisations will come to us and say, oh, we need X system. Sometimes we have to sort of introduce them to that, just to be a little bit more open-minded and to understand what's happening in their business before we jump to that solution. So yeah, there's lots of things to talk about before we talk about the actual solution. We need to understand how they operate day to day. We need to understand what systems they use at the moment, where the bottlenecks and the holdups are, what reporting do they need? Are they being asked for, is their parent company in Switzerland asking them for certain information that they've got to be able to supply? So those are all the kind of questions and things that we're talking about before we go anywhere near what kind of software it might be that will help them.
So maybe once the understanding of those wider requirements, the people, the processes is all, I say established, but I think it's going to continue to.
Yeah, it's an ongoing process, Mike. Yeah.
So then how do you help businesses kind of understand the options that are available to them?
I think it's continuing that dialogue. It's helping them to prioritize. There may be a range of different things that they're looking to do, but we need to start to work with them to be able to understand what are the key things, what is really important, what's the first thing that we need to address, what are the big issues, because we do this all the time, but they don't. So it's really up to us to guide the organisations through that process, where we should be the experts, if you like, here. They know their business, but we know perhaps the process to go through to look at what the best solution or the best outcome would be.
Yeah, and you said something before about kind of keeping an open mind, because sometimes someone might come into that conversation and be thinking, oh, we need something new, or I've seen this on I dare say these days, we've seen this on LinkedIn or an Instagram reel or whatever it might be. And it might not always necessarily be something new. It might just be I guess a piece of advice around improving the existing setup or leaning on a valued partner we have within our partner network that's going to solve those challenges, rather than it being a completely new piece of software. So what's the difference between kind of establishing if it is something that needs to be kind of new setup, system, migration, implementation, rather than making better use of what maybe already is in place?
Yeah, it's a difficult one. And I think the key thing, because it's quite often a quicker solution to make use of the systems that you've got already, it's a matter of understanding whether those systems can genuinely support the business and where the business is going. So that's the key driver there, really, to understand. And, the kind of things we need to understand from the customer is what's really important, what are the objectives, what are the goals. It sort of circle around these questions quite a few times. What is it that you're looking to do? We try and help customers by, talking through different scenarios with them about how things would work and the kind of things that they can do. We can show them examples of how they can do things, and it's almost getting them to visualize the end result of what they need. What does what does a good system look like? And you're right, it might not be removing the total system that they have, but it might just be replacing parts of that system. It might be integrating a new element with elements that already exist that are working fine. Every customer is different. Some people will need a new end-to-end system. Some people will need, one key part replacing, but integrating with other systems that are already in the business.
So you mentioned kind of like other systems there, and we've already spoken about people and processes. And how do you help people and businesses think just beyond finance software, or just beyond, I guess, what they may be coming to you to have a conversation about? How do you make them think a little bit wider?
Yeah, it's about looking at the business as a whole, really, because there's lots of interconnecting areas. It might be the finance team that might have come to us initially, but what we find is that finance is just the engine, really. The system is going to have touch points that will be business wide. So it's very much about working with them to understand that and to see where the system does touch other systems. They're not easy issues to sort of grapple with, and and they do need some thought and some time. But again, that's where we really help organisations. We understand the sort of end-to-end process within the total organisation, and it's about working with them to try and help them through that process. Because sometimes when you're in a situation as well, it's more difficult to see what you do need. It's easier sometimes to come in from outside with fresh eyes.
Yeah, it sounds like it can be all encompassing and quite challenging. So how do you help customers in that space kind of maybe avoid overcomplicating things? Is there a process that you go through to allow them to do that?
Yeah, it's about prioritizing. It's about working with them, so to be realistic as to what they can achieve, not what can be achieved in total, but what can be achieved in a particular time scale within a particular project. So it's back down to setting the goals and the objectives for the project, setting the priorities, and being realistic from a time scale, from a budget point of view, because everybody wants, to a certain extent, wants everything, but it's one of our roles to help them understand what's maybe the phasing of the project and what's the best thing to do first and next and after that.
Perfect. So we kind of spoke about that initial discovery and the consultation phase of understanding the business and the people and the processes. So then when it kind of comes to exploring some options and possible solutions I dare say like Sage 200 or Sage Intacct, how do you then start to establish what's maybe the best fit for an individual? Or is it customer preference, or is it going to be preference of the situation and the scenario?
Hopefully by the time we've got to the sort of point in the process with working with the customer, then things have started to come out of that process which will point us in a particular direction. So it's a little bit like a map, really, and how we're sort of going down one road or another. And there are different advantages for the various different solutions. Sage Intacct may be the right solution for someone who's looking for a true cloud solution, someone who's potentially got multiple entities that they want in the same system. They want to consolidate that information. Perhaps they've got a parent company and they need to consolidate open and send that information. Then Sage Intacct would be a great fit for that. If it's a more complex, perhaps a manufacturing business with really complex operational needs, then Sage 200 might be a better fit for that organisation. So there's lots of components and lots of things to think about. The great thing that we've got here, because I'm just one of the people in the process, is that we've got solution experts and business experts, people that I'll bring into the process at the right moment in time to work with us and the business to understand which is the best solution. We spend a lot of time with the customer. We'll walk around factories and we'll understand the process that happens there. That's one of the joys of my job. I get to walk around lots of different factories, from walking around a a paper factory one day, people that make vast quantities of toilet roll and kitchen roll, and then the next week I'll be in a sort of a state-of-the-art tech company, and they're working on all these interactive video games. So very different businesses, but have got needs to be able to run their processes through a system that'll give them the end results that they need.
So come on, Jenny, you must have a good story of a place that you've been, or confidentiality aside, what's one of the favourite places, or maybe the most interesting things that you've maybe seen on site in terms of going out and understanding the business?
I think one of the most memorable that comes to mind is we went to a pet food factory where they were making vast quantities of various different animal feed, I think, in various different ways, and that's huge, vast factory and warehouse. And but I think the most challenging thing there, I think, was the smell.
The smell. That's what stuck with you the most, is the smell.
That's what stuck with me. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I'm sure you end up in all parts of the country and seeing different businesses. And I guess that's part of the enjoyment of your role, I guess, as well, isn't it? Getting out and seeing people. So these days, everything is online, and you can get some great conversations going when you see somebody on the other side of a screen, but getting in front of people and actually experiencing and seeing what they see, and that surely has more value.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's nothing that we like more really than going out. When somebody gets that high-vis jacket out for you to put on, that you're going into the factory or the warehouse or something like that. That's the interesting bit, because that's the bit of the job that we love, really. It's understanding what businesses do. Every business is unique and every business is fascinating. And the thing that makes us successful and gives us good outcomes for the customers is that we're just curious. We're just constantly curious. We want to ask questions. We want to know what people do. We want to understand what makes the business tick. And and it's absolutely fascinating. Everywhere you go is absolutely fascinating.
Then when it kind of comes to getting into some product, and I'm really conscious of talking too much about product, because without understanding the businesses we've already established, the product asset side of things is to some extent, until that point, irrelevant. So what resources then do allow customers to kind of maybe educate themselves around a solution, or get to see it, feel it, experience it for what it might do for them?
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of resources that we have when we get to that point of wanting them to, of starting to look at something tangible, from videos, product tours, white papers, data sheets, all that kind of information. But nothing beats really the more detailed demos that are specific to that organisation that we will do once we get to that stage. And one of the really, really useful tools are workshops, where customers will demo to us what they're doing, show us the kind of reports that they're producing, probably in Excel. That's what a lot of people are doing, so that they're showing us what they have to do, what the things that they need to do, so that we can look at that and then show them back, whether it's Sage Intacct or Sage 200, how that can be done within another system. And those are really, really valuable. We may do that, 2 or 3 times in different areas of the business. One of the key things is to make sure that the sessions that we're running with organisations are relevant from the industry type, but also from the roles of people that are there, because somebody in purchasing will maybe need to do something very different to somebody who's out on the road, managing a construction project. So it's about understanding the audience as well, and showing them the relevant parts of the system.
And it just crossed my mind then when you talk about kind of all that aspects of different things that are involved. Oh, there must be a cost to all of this, but actually all that discovery and the workshopping and the demonstration, that in itself is part of our process. And from a business's perspective, the biggest cost on them that they're going to see is their investment into that process, and not a financial investment, but more it's their time and getting the right people in the room.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right, Mike. There's no cost at all. It's what we do. We have to do that to do our job properly. It's what we want to do. So yeah, the only thing that we need from a business is, we need access to the right people. We need the time. We need them to be open-minded so that they can, and honest really, and tell us that, the issues that they're currently facing in their business. And it does take time. It is something that they'll need to invest some time and resource into. But hopefully the end result is, that they get the right system that meets their business needs.
So just maybe flipping it on its head slightly here, we've obviously spoken a lot about your approach and what you're looking for to help uncover some of this information for a business, but I guess a bit more independent advice. What should businesses be looking for from us in a demonstration, or from anybody in a demonstration in that respect?
Yeah, so they need to be confident that they're working with an organisation that they feel that they can trust, and then that they're getting access to people that have got specialist knowledge on in their industry, and in the various different solutions that we've been talking about. So those are some of the key things I think that they need to be looking out for.
And then when it starts to then coming into pulling in other resources, individuals that will come and demonstrate software, I'm sure there's been moments where something comes up in a demonstration and it's like, oh, that might not work the way we want it to work. How do you navigate that position?
Yeah, I think it's hopefully by that point you've got a really good relationship with that organisation. You've worked with them for quite a while. That you can be open and honest with them. They can be open and honest back with you. So I think it's just going back round that scenario just to make sure you've understood what it is that the customers wants to do, and just play that back to them a few times. Really, it's not about what we want to sell a customer, it's about the needs that customer has and finding the right solutions, not to try and shoehorn an incorrect solution into their business, if you like.
And I think that's really transparent, isn't it? In terms of as you, I think you used the word shoehorn there, from an internal perspective, like that is a very conscious thought that happens within our business, because ultimately if it's a problem in that discovery, in that demonstration phase, it's going to become a problem implementing it, and it's also probably going to become a problem long term, and it's you start as you mean to go on in a lot of respects. So that transparency is really paramount.
Yeah, it's about relationship as well, because we're not just here for the discovery stage, if you like. So at Innov8 we will implement the solution, and then we will be the long-term partner supporting that organisation going forward. So it's in everyone's interest to find with the customer the right solution going forward, because then we can grow on that. The customer can achieve the plans that they've got, and we can help them with that. Yeah, so you're right. It's in everybody's best interest to get this right at the beginning. That's the time to get it right.
What I want to talk about next might be slightly pushing it out a little bit, but I'm going to talk ballparks, budgets, estimates. Now, what factors, I guess probably is the better way to say it, what factors influence pricing the most? Because the pricing is what it is, but there are obviously things that influence that to a greater or lesser extent.
Yeah. No, you're right. And we do have to talk about price at some point when we get to that part in the process. We're always very open and transparent and honest, whether it's ballpark estimates, budgetary estimates, or actual pricing when we've done a full proposal. So yeah, that's something that we will always provide. The factors that influence it are the kind of things that you would almost expect, I suppose. The number of users, the number of modules, how complex the project is, so how much training, how much implementation is required, where's the data coming from, so it's all those kind of elements which then all add together to give us a final costing.
there's also an element of how costings have changed from CapEx to OpEx expenditure over probably the last 5 years, where everything seems to be more shifting towards more operational expenditure than capital expenditure these days. So what did that conversation then look like with a business?
Yeah, and I think organisations are getting more and more used to that as time's gone on. To a certain extent, that's something that they're expecting, is what I find. And again, there's no hidden science behind the costing, and it's about being as open and honest and transparent as we can be on that, and making sure that everyone understands what is included in a cost and what's not included in a cost as well. That's key, because as we go through the discovery and the consultation process, lots of areas will have been discussed. So it's always good to clarify what's included and what's not included, at least in this phase. Maybe it's going to be included later. And that's what we always try and do, because again, it's best to get it right at this point, rather than have to worry about it later on.
So in terms of, I guess, considerations beyond pricing and costs, what should businesses be considering, at this stage, kind of making a decision? What should they be considering beyond software costs?
Yeah, so I suppose the key things for an organisation, and we touched on it before, is sort of the time that's going to be required for them as an organisation to get dedicated to the project. That's something they need to consider. This is what we do, but they have to continue to do their day job at the same time as implementing a system. So that needs to be considered. They need to consider the change, and look at how to handle change. We can help with that. I don't know whether we're going to talk about it later, but one of the key success factors for any implementation, any project of any type, is how that change is embraced by the organisation, how people are brought into that and how they buy into that. That will make a significant difference to how successful the system's going to be. And, the longer term, looking at the longer term side as well, what perhaps they will do in subsequent phases. So it's very much around the internal resource and the people and the change and that process.
Yeah, we can definitely touch back on that in a moment. Again, was just thinking there was that can be something that holds a business back, the commitment to the time and the implementation and obviously change. So what does tend to stop people making a move or making changes? What does that look like? And then we can maybe talk about what good looks like instead.
Yeah, I think people worry. They worry about disruption, because they worry about the business, the day-to-day business disruption that might happen. They worry about, because everyone's busy, everyone's really busy, so they worry about that lack of time for people to have to invest in, thinking about the project, testing, development, that type of thing. And sometimes people just fear change as well. So those are the key worries, I think, that people have when they're thinking about a project like this.
Okay, great. So what does good look like then? What does a successful outcome for you from the consultation through to actually probably even the implementation? I think you used the word before, like buy-in.
Yeah.
What does that therefore look like?
Yeah, so I think if for a project to be successful and to be a good project, it's very much about having some, and again we've talked about this before, but having some clear objectives and some clear goals at the beginning, so that everyone knows what we're looking to achieve. And it is about the people and the processes. It's about engaging people at an early stage, different types of people within the organisation. Obviously, the key stakeholders need to be engaged, but then you have, you've got your experts within the business. You've got different types of users to try and engage people at all levels, because they will be the people that will be using the system, and we want them to use it to its full potential, not to try and work around the system. We really want them to engage with it. Because if we do come across issues, which, issues will come up as we go through, they always do, but having that open conversation and having that relationship and that honest communication, then we can get over any issues that come up.
I think that's been really, really insightful and some probably quality advice in there as well, Jenny. So maybe just to finish off then, what would you say maybe is that one thing that if someone's listening to this and they say, yeah, it sounds like us, where's that starting point? What's the one thing that they should be taking into consideration, right now?
Not fear the change, I would say. Don't fear the change. Try and embrace that change. Understand that you have a need. The thing that people can do most often, rather than changing their system, is to do nothing. To put off that change. The longer you put something off, the bigger the issue becomes. So it's to start to act now, whatever that small first step is, to actually start now and do that, because once you're doing something, then you're on that road to change, if you like.
That's hugely valuable what you said there, Jenny. I think the art of doing nothing is the easy thing to do sometimes, isn't it? But actually, yeah. It's the most challenging part, but then actually doing something and trying to further and better your business is being open about it and embracing it is a really good way to go. So that's been phenomenal insight. Maybe give some value in even listening to the finance function, I dare say. But well, that's it for today's episode of the finance function. A huge thank you to Jenny for joining us and giving us that behind the scenes look. Hopefully today's conversation has helped a little bit, certainly maybe understand the process. And if you are reviewing your current setup or planning for growth, or even just trying to understand what good could look like in your business, have a think about what Innov8 might be able to do for you. Even more so importantly, right here, right now. If you have enjoyed today's episode, make sure you give us a follow. We've got loads more content coming from the finance function in the coming weeks. Make sure that you don't miss out on future conversations. And until next time, keep moving further faster. Oh, Jenny, that was a brilliant record. I'm going to say definitely better than Gemma was.
You better tell her that, Mike. Then I've got my review coming up.
I'll get the good word in, don't you worry.
Fabulous.